to talk to him a few moments ago before he came out of the van. And his total concentration now is getting that bike off the approach ramp and onto the landing ramp. And he's not hesitating. He'll go.
Okay, that isn't our guest that you saw. That was Evel Knievel. And the stand-in for Evel Knievel is here. Jim Winning, he's an old friend of mine, and he's a bad motorcycle hood. No, he's a motorcycle aficionado.
Sure.
And in his retirement, we're friends on Facebook, and I know he did this trip a year or so ago on the Skyline Drive. What do you call it?
I've done that a couple. Yeah, Skyline Drive, Blue Ridge Parkway.
Right.
Yeah.
Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yep.
But recently, he blew me away totally with, I'll let you tell it. It's a trip out west, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I left middle of September. I'd always wanted to do this trip. I'd done a bunch of other trips down south and actually did a couple trips over in Ireland and Scotland.
I know, I remember that.
And but I always wanted to ride the motorcycle out west. And so I left the middle of September and rode out to, went out to South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and then down into Utah. I met my wife in Salt Lake City. She flew out and met me there. And she rode with me for a couple of weeks. I think we zigzagged across Utah about 5 times. And then down to Arizona and then eventually home. So I was gone. I did just over 8,000 miles.
Good
and
grief.
About, I think it was about 5 weeks in the saddle.
Wow.
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway. Looking for adventure. And whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Fire all of your guns at once and explode into space. Born to be wild.
I did what I call the bonsai run
Right.
out to South Dakota. Took me 4 days, and the first time I jumped off the interstate was in South Dakota, and I went down through the Badlands. If you haven't been to the Badlands, it is a really, really peculiar place.
I haven't been.
It's just, it's really, really odd. You got this, prairie, and then all of a sudden there's just crazy, mountainous-like structures. It's really, really odd. Appears out of nowhere. And so after that, I went up to Hill City, South Dakota, and I spent a few days in the Black Hills.
Okay.
I went
All right.
to Crazy Horse Memorial,
wow.
which was really very, very interesting. Unfortunately, the day that I did sort of the loop through the Black Hills was rainy and foggy.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you get shut down by weather sometimes?
I even went when it snowed.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, so.
You don't have chains on a motorcycle.
No, I don't have chains. But, no,
You got to watch it, though.
Oh yeah. I'm a pretty cautious driver.
Is this a Harley you have?
No, I have a BMW.
BMW, okay.
Yeah, so I spent some time in Hill City, and I did the loop. Went to Crazy Horse Memorial, which was fabulous. At the end of that day, I stopped at Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
And apparently it's up there, up in the mountains, but I never saw it. It was
Really? It was foggy?
It was just fog, unfortunately. And then from there I went up to Montana.
Okay.
And I did go to the battlefield for the Little Bighorn, saw Custer's grave, which was that was very interesting. There's a lot of very lonely highways up in Montana.
I've been there, once as a kid when we were driving out west, but my wife and I skied at Big Sky a couple of years ago. We always take a day off when we go out west, and we drove around. We went out to some hot springs or something, and if you're doing 80, you better be in the breakdown lane. They drive. I can't imagine being on a motorcycle.
Yeah, I was on one road. It was 2-lane road, and I think it was like 220 something miles that I did, and I think I saw 5 vehicles, and they were all coming that other direction, and they were all semis.
Wow.
And every one of them I could see probably 20 miles away from me.
Wow.
Fortunately, I I can Bluetooth music into my helmet. So I did a
Okay.
lot of singing to myself on that part of the trip.
And your wife is with you. You're connected with the radio thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you can't yell over.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. So,
Okay.
so we were in Ireland riding motorcycle there, and we had the helmets that had the communicator in them.
Okay.
And of course, there you see lots of sheep. And every time she would see sheep, she'd start going, bah, bah. And so finally, after the second year after listening to this, I said to her, I said, you know, Carol, I said, they can't hear you. So, and then I stayed in a town called Red Lodge, which was, I don't know if you've heard of that, but there's a big ski area there.
Red Lodge.
And which would have been sort of southern, sort of the central part of Montana, but down south near the Wyoming border.
Okay.
Nice little town.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went over probably one of the for me, it was probably one of the craziest highways I've ever been on. It's called Beartooth Highway, which was built, I guess, back in the 60s, and it was to go over the mountains to connect Red Lodge with Cody, Wyoming.
Ooh.
And when you go over Beartooth Pass, it's about 11,000 feet.
Wow.
And there was snow up there, and I was told by one of the locals that the snow was not from this year; it was left over from last year.
Oh, wow.
Well, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know, but it was.
Looks good in the brochure.
Yeah, It was cold and windy up at the top of the pass. In fact, it was so windy I was afraid to stop because I was afraid I would get blown over.
Oh, man.
But it was pretty cool up there. It was.
What mechanical problems do you have to deal with, or do you deal with? I mean, that's a lot of miles. You're going through some rugged.
Yeah, I really didn't have any mechanical issues. I mean, I'm prepared for things like flat tires and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But fortunately, the bike is in good shape. I did not have any mechanical issues. I did have one bad experience, and that was when I was in the Black Hills. I made a bad turn, and I got on a road that eventually became a gravel road, which eventually became a dirt road, which eventually became a mud road. And I think at one point it was literally like driving through 6 inches of cake batter. And so let's see. From there, I went down to Cody, spent a few days in Cody, Wyoming, and then drove through Yellowstone, headed west to Idaho, went through Yellowstone.
Yellowstone's pretty cool. I was there as a kid in the 50s, which was kind of cool because the interstates weren't built. And it was, we stayed at the Old Faithful Lodge. Yellowstone's a pretty neat place.
I stopped at Old Faithful. Unfortunately, my timing was off, so I didn't get there to see it blow, but or whatever it does, it shoot.
It is pretty impressive.
But all those little hot
pools
with bubbling water and steam and bubbling mud pots were really cool.
When'd you hit Jackson Hole?
So when I was over in Idaho Falls, and I did a ride out through Jackson Hole over to the Grand Tetons, and I would say probably the most magnificent visual part of the trip was the Grand Tetons. Just absolutely, breathtaking.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You got to get there in the winter.
Oh, I bet it's fantastic.
In fact, I have a picture my wife gave me. We've been out to Jackson Hole skiing about three times, I guess. And it's called Le Grand, and it's a picture of the Grand Teton. And we have it hanging in our house. And it's just, every once in a while I stop and just look at it. And wow.
The great thing about the timing of my trip was that I hit it during their foliage season. So
cool.
You get all those aspen trees, and they turn this, brilliant yellowish gold color. It was so it was pretty. Visually, it was.
It's a cool
really
place.
It is.
There's fishing. And the town's kind of neat. You didn't have any Rocky Mountain oysters, did you?
No, not this trip. Had them before.
We won't get into detail what they are. They're not the ocean variety.
Right. So I've long since figured out what they are.
Oh man, no, I passed.
Spent a couple days in Idaho Falls, and then went down to Salt Lake City, and that's where I met Carol.
Okay.
And then we started our sort of tour through Utah, through the national parks, and it just seems like just as you leave one national park in Utah, you're in another one. So I'm sure I'll forget some of them, but we started off in Arches. We went to Capitol Reef, Canyonland.
Wow.
Bryce.
Bryce is amazing. I
Yeah.
think. I was just
Yeah, the colors was fantastic.
and the hoodoos. I mean,
And then into Zion, and then eventually went down to the north rim of the canyon. And we got there literally, I think it was the week before they were getting ready to close, because they closed the north rim.
when we were out in the Northwest 2 years ago, it was in late spring, and due to the snow, it hadn't opened.
Yeah.
We couldn't get to the North Rim.
Yeah, they told us that they closed the earlier of the first snowfall or October 15th. We were staying at that point. We were staying in a town called Kanab, Utah,
Okay.
which happens to be a lot of old westerns were
Was
filmed.
shot there.
Yes, we left Kanab and then eventually headed over to Page, Arizona, which is on Lake Powell. And when we
Did you go to Antelope Canyon?
no, we tried, but unfortunately it was
Well-
they were having some. We'd had a lot of rain, and so
Okay.
the lower canyon was flooded, and the upper canyon was basically booked out. We
Okay.
did go to Horseshoe Bend.
Okay.
Some great pictures of Horseshoe Bend. But when we were heading from Kanab over to Page, when you're in Kanab, you're in the desert.
Yeah.
And so I think it was probably in the mid-50s when we left there, and it was raining a little bit. What I failed to realize is that we were going to be climbing elevation, and eventually it dropped down into the low 30s and started snowing. It was pretty chilly. I could hear Mrs. Winning's teeth chattering in the back. It was a cold, miserable
How
ride.
many days were you actually traveling?
I think I counted up. It was
5
like
weeks?
33 days on the
wow.
on the bike on the saddle.
You get saddle sores? I mean,
No. So
that's wild.
and
Where's the next trip?
I don't know. I've never been in the Northwest. I've never been in Oregon, Washington State, and I did. The one place that I missed in Montana that I wished I had spent some time and gone to was Glacier.
I've heard Glacier is spectacular. You didn't go through a little town in Idaho called Driggs, did you?
Doesn't sound familiar.
They got the world's biggest potato.
So one of the other greatest disappointments of the trip was I did not have enough time to go to the Spam Museum.
How about a trip to Europe? Go around the continent. That.
I thought about it.
Why don't you get a sidecar and I'll go with you?
You'll have to let the dog squeeze and sit next to you.
All right, my man. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Sounds cool.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
All right, take it
Take
easy.
care.
Thank you.